East LA didn't wake up hard. It learned the code the long way. From dusty roots to packed barrios, the streets built their own rules, their own pride, and their own scars. Names rose, sets formed, lines got drawn, and the city changed with every step. Behind the murals in chrome sits a history that breathes, heavy, stubborn, unforgettable. Power moved from the yard to the avenue, and the hush of the alley still carries rumor, rank, and payback. Some say it was about respect. Others say it was survival. The truth sits somewhere in the shadows, waiting for someone to speak it right. We're going to peel back the layers, the old heads, the young soldiers, the silence, and the sparks that lit the whole map. Join us as we trace the roots, the ranks, and the street laws that shaped a legacy. East Los Angeles did not start with sets and colors. Over 2,000 years back, the Gabrielino people lived on that open land. The 1700s brought Spanish colonists, and the 1800s handed the ground to Mexican and Spanish ranchers. In the early 1900s, the fields flipped into city blocks, pulling in Jewish, Russian, and Japanese immigrants. Back then, anything east of downtown was called East LA, and that meant Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, and more. This matters because folks today mix them up, not seeing how deep the roots run or how many different people built those streets. Just east of Boyle Heights sat a real neighborhood called Maravilla, tied to what used to be Brooklyn Avenue, now Cesar Chavez Avenue. People called it the Maravilla community, and it carried pride, families, and culture. At the turn of the 20th century, the area was known as Maravilla and Belvedere. By the 1950s, a church on Kern Avenue stood as Maravilla Baptist Church. Time moved, the church came down, and apartments rose up. That slow change was a quiet signal that the barrio was shifting, even before the streets hardened. In 1928, the people of Maravilla put brick on brick and built the Maravilla handball courts on Mednick Avenue. That wall was more than a game spot. It was a meeting place where older heads shared stories and where neighborhood pride got its backbone. Almost a century later, the courts still stand. From that same ground, the name Maravilla would be carried by youngsters, first as neighbors and later as homies who claimed the streets. The court became memory and marker, a steady thing while the barrio toughened. By the 1930s, the neighborhood changed again. Mexican immigrants moved in heavy, and Jewish, Russian, and Japanese families moved out to places like Compton and Watts. By 1935, East LA was about 97% Hispanic. But the Great Depression took jobs, and poverty hit hard. Survival mode kicked in. Young men from the barrios formed cliques to protect each other. These were not yet the gangs the city would come to fear. They were neighborhood squads guarding their blocks. But over time, those crews learned the streets could swallow good intentions. Two names started to echo on corners, Maravilla and White Fence. White Fence came up in Boyle Heights, taking the name from the white picket fence around La Purísima Church. That fence was a line, a message about where Hispanic families stood next to white neighborhoods. White Fence began as the La Purísima Crowd, a sports group that turned into one of LA's oldest and most feared gangs. At first, White Fence and Maravilla stood side by side against outsiders. When that outside heat faded, the truce cracked. In 1939, White Fence members killed two Maravilla homies and dumped them on Whittier Boulevard. That hit lit the fuse and marked the first recorded gang rivalry in Los Angeles history. By the 1950s, a new power rose from behind walls. In 1957, inside San Quentin, Hispanic inmates banded together for protection and called themselves La M.A., the M, short for the Mexican Mafia. What started as prison brotherhood became an empire, with rules that did not bend. No leaving, no infighting. Moves on the street would answer to them. When members paroled, they brought those codes back to the hood. For a moment, even old rivals like Maravilla and White Fence cooled off, because the Mafia's rise demanded order, but peace built on fear is thin. Maravilla did not stay a single crew. It became a tree with many branches, each holding the same name, but standing on its own turf. These barrios claimed roots in unincorporated East LA, far from city limits, but close to the heart. Arizona Maravilla, El Hoyo Maravilla, Ford Maravilla, Mariana Maravilla, and more came up carrying the banner. Some say El Hoyo Maravilla started in the late 1920s or 30s, making it one of the oldest Chicano sets in East LA. From that seed, others spread into the San Gabriel Valley, Montebello, Nevada, and the Inland Empire, each with its own flavor and history. Most street sets in Southern California paid taxes to Mexican Mafia, kicking up a cut from narco moves and hustles in exchange for protection. The Maravilla barrios refused. They kept their loyalty local and told the Mafia no. That choice was bold and dangerous. The answer from La M was a green light. Open season. Every Sureño gang loyal to the Mafia became a threat overnight. Maravilla was no longer just fighting rivals. They stood against almost everyone around them. The price of pride was pressure from all sides, and yet they stayed on their squares. Sharing a name did not mean sharing peace. The Maravilla barrios had their own internal beefs. Arizona Maravilla locked horns with Lote Maravilla. Lopez Maravilla had a long-standing problem with Ford Maravilla. These were not strangers crossing in. These were neighbors and cousins with history. The fights turned heavy enough that sometimes Maravilla became its own worst enemy. Respect lines cut like razor wire, and the same name on the wall did not save anyone from the next lineup of problems. Even with deep grudges, there were moments when the homies tried to freeze the beef. In 1986, during the Christmas holidays, a truce meeting took place. The aim was simple: a ceasefire for the season. In 1994, another peace treaty was made while war with La M burned hot. For a while, the peace held. For almost 2 years, the Maravillas did not fight each other, standing together because the Mafia was a bigger threat. Some call that their strongest moment of unity. Others say it was only a pause that the streets could not hold. Each Maravilla set moved with its own style. Ford Maravilla stayed active and visible, mobbing through its blocks and catching funk even with Fraser and Mariana. Gage Maravilla stood near the famous El Pino tree, holding the border between East LA and Boyle Heights. Kern Maravilla was among the oldest, rooted in the original community almost 100 years back. Mariana Maravilla, founded in the 1940s, grew big and organized, and their girls rolled as Monas or Marvelous Monas, representing like the guys. Moiria Maravilla, a subset of Mariana, ran cliques like the Tiny Dukes, Jokers, and Sinners. Pomeroy Maravilla formed from nephews and younger brothers of JMV heads. Even the Maravilla project stamped their identity. The family tree was wide, tangled, and proud. Some of the heaviest names tied to Maravilla met their fate behind bars. Alfredo Cuate Jimenez, once tied to La Ame, was killed by a brother from another set. Manuel Manito Romero, who flipped to Nuestra Familia, was murdered in prison by Robot Salas and Victor Minares from Eastside Clover, both repping the Mexican Mafia. Quemado got stabbed for showing sympathy to the wrong side. Jose Slugo Pineda and James Sonny Pena were also murdered in San Quentin. Those endings showed how betrayal and politics ran deeper than Barrio lines. In prison, the yard wrote its own rules, and loyalty could flip to a death sentence. The Maravilla identity was never only about banging. It tied back to that original community east of Boyle Heights, to the names on signs, to churches that came and went, and to those brick handball courts that still hold echoes. But the streets wrote their own script. By choosing not to bow to La Emma, Maravilla sets kept a certain honor and paid a brutal price. With a green light on their backs, they fought rivals and sometimes fought each other. As East LA expanded, another name began to take over the streets: Big Hazard, or Hazard Grande. Their home was Ramona Gardens, a massive public housing project built in the 1940s in Boyle Heights. The place was meant to help families after World War II, but it quickly became something else. With 610 apartment units packed into just 32 acres, tension was unavoidable. Most residents were Mexican American, but a few black families also lived there, which caused racial clashes early on. Ramona Gardens became known for violence, poverty, and a constant battle between the people and the police. It was built with good intentions but became one of LA's most dangerous zones. Locals said gang life centered around an area called the Square, a small parking lot that turned into the gang's meeting spot, their heart, their headquarters. From there, Big Hazard ruled the projects and built their name in blood. Many believe Big Hazard started as a clique under white fence before branching off into their own. They claimed their territory proudly, marking every wall around Ramona Gardens with Hazard Grande. In 1972, local artist Willie Heron painted the wall that cracked open after his brother was beaten and stabbed by Hazard members. That mural wasn't just art, it was a scar written on the neighborhood itself. From then on, Big Hazard's rep only grew darker. They were known for brutal shootouts, ambushes, and standoffs with cops. Their hate for law enforcement exploded after Mauricio Cornejo, a well-known Hazard member, died in police custody in 2007. Witnesses claimed he was beaten even after being cuffed. His death pushed the community's anger to the edge, turning the projects into a war zone. Riots broke out, and the LAPD moved in heavy. Big Hazard had roots that went straight to the top of the criminal chain. They were tight with the Mexican Mafia since the 1950s. One of the most feared names was Robert Robot Salas, a Big Hazard heavyweight who rose fast in La M and ran the yard like a warden without a badge. He was cold, held power tight, and carried a personal hate for El Hoyo Maravilla that he turned into mission and policy. In 1966, he caught a 211 in downtown Los Angeles, a move many say he made on purpose to get locked in and climb the ranks behind walls. By 1968, he got his first big order and nearly beat Manuel Romero from El Hoyo to death for disobeying instructions, stamping his loyalty in blood. From there, he became the Mafia's muscle, using green lights to settle old scores and blending revenge with organization, with Whispers laying more than 100 murders at his call, many aimed at Maravilla. By 1977, he had a right hand who never flinched, Alfie Sosa, who carried out 3 back-to-back hits on Alfred Cuadra Jimenez, Gilbert Roybal, and Bruno Chavez for disrespect and weak effort. Inside, the saying spread like smoke. You don't question Robot, you survive him. Robot was a godfather figure to Hazard and a major shot caller in La M. His reach stretching from street corners to cell blocks until his death in 2004 marked the end of an era and opened the door for new blood to take over. Another name was Adolf Champ Reynoso, another Hazard OG, an Ime enforcer. Then there was David Smilon Gallardo, who carried out hits for the Mafia and controlled Ramona Gardens with an iron hand. But even loyalty had limits. Between 1992 and 1993, the Mafia ordered the deaths of several Hazard members, Manuel Rocky Luna, Ricardo Rasco Gonzalez, and Charles Charlie Brown Manriquez. Each one was taken out by Ime's own soldiers, proving that nobody was untouchable, not even Hazard's own. In 1994, actor Edward James Olmos decided to make a film that showed the real lives behind LA's gang culture. His company, Olmos Productions, created a documentary called Lives in the Hazard. It focused on the men behind Big Hazard and even included cast members from his movie, American Me. But behind the camera, tragedy struck. One of Olmos's gang advisors, Ana Lizarraga, was a respected counselor who grew up in Ramona Gardens. Locals knew her as the Gang Lady. She was helping broker truces between feuding sets and even brought rivals together during the filming. But on May 12, 1992, Ana was shot execution style in her driveway just weeks before her 50th birthday. The shooter was later identified as Jose Gilbert Gonzalez, a Hazard member who got life in prison. Her murder rocked the Latino community, a reminder that in this life, even the Peacemakers could get caught in the crossfire. Through the years, Big Hazard fought with nearly every Latino gang around them, the Avenues, 38th Street, Barrio Nuevo Estrada, and more. Their mortal enemies were Girardi Loma 13 and the crazy-ass Mexicans KAM. Yet sometimes, the streets forced unlikely peace. During the early 1990s, while filming American Me, Big Hazard made a truce with their rivals from Michigan Chicano Force, MC Force. It was Ana Lizarraga who made that happen, trying to prove that not every fight had to end in blood. But as history shows in East LA, truces are fragile things. At a small house party on December 12, 1994, the vibe flipped fast when a guest wrote MRV for Maravilla on paper, and Guadalupe Dominguez crossed it out. In gang life, crossing out a placa is a straight-up slap. A Maravilla homie, Genaro Origel Candido, stormed in, pressed the room about who dissed the set, hands got thrown, and he got tossed from the house. He later called and said he was coming back to retaliate. Around 1:30 p.m., cars pulled up, shots rang out into the home, and neighbors saw the blast. One witness said she was sure she saw Origel Candido firing. Another said the shooter looked very similar to him. The message was simple: cross out MRV, pay the price, and the neighborhood felt it. Origel Candido claimed he was wearing jeans, a white turtleneck, and a blue shirt, not the black fit witnesses mentioned. He said the IDs were shaky. But jurors are the ones who weigh faces and voices, not the court. The Supreme Court looked at it the way the law demands. Could a rational jury see guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? With one witness firm on her ID and another backing it up, The conviction for shooting into a dwelling stood solid. The state said gang culture made this predictable since what separates a criminal gang from kids that play basketball is criminal activity. The state tried to stack time with a gang enhancement under Nevada law, saying MRV is a criminal gang and the shooting furthered the gang. But the high court cut that extra time. Why? Because the expert only gave conclusions, not proof that felonies were a common activity of Maravilla as the statute requires. No numbers, no pattern, no details, just yes. That was not enough, so the conviction stayed, but the gang add-on got reversed. A legal check that says you cannot enhance unless you prove the gang piece right, and that ruling would echo in other gang cases where the state tries to push the paper without bringing the receipts. In the summer of 1995, a quiet East LA street turned into a setup for war. Alonzo Ramirez moved his wife and kids into a house sitting deep inside Big Hazard territory. He saw their placas, their graffiti, their homies almost every day. One problem: Alonzo's oldest son was from crazy-ass Mexicans, KAM, a deadly enemy of Big Hazard, and sometimes came back home to visit. In gang law, that alone was straight disrespect. June 17, 1996, East LA. On North Cordova, inside Lopez Maravilla turf, 7 guys wrenching on a car get lit up. 2 shots from a rifle cut down Jose Alberto Rodriguez and Hector Ricardo Gonzalez Martinez. Cops say the shooter is Jose Gonzalez from Lot Stoner's 13, a rival set across the line. He is inked up with Lot 13 on his neck and head, and that beef over turf runs deep. One witness, Juan Rocha, points him out clean. Others pick him in photos and a live lineup, then later back off. In a hood where snitch gets you checked, that switch up smells like pressure, and the jury is told to watch that closely. Eyewitnesses first circle Gonzalez's photo, then some say they only went with rumors or they got spooked by a tattoo. One witness even winked, like telling the homie he would not snitch. The judge says the photo and live lineups were not suggestive. Why? 6 faces in the spread, no cue to pick him. At the live lineup, the back of the head tattoo shows when he turns, but nobody saw a tattoo on the shooter that night, so the mark did not steer the ID. The court keeps the IDs in play and lets the jury weigh who is real and who is folding to street heat. Detectives find a .223 Armalite stashed under a house tied to Lot Stoner's. 2 shell casings at the scene match that rifle. A Lot member, Homero Cardenas, tells police on tape that Gonzalez said he did it, then flips back, then flips again. It is messy, but the gun link plus Rocha's ID gives the state a lane. Gang expert Sergeant Al Garcia breaks down the rules. Lopez MV and Lot Stoner's 13 are bitter enemies. Turf matters. Rats get dealt with. He says witness intimidation is real on both sides, and a gang member rarely lies to put his own homie in a murder. The judge lets this in as expert game, not crystal balling any one witness, just mapping the culture so the jury can read the flip-flops without getting played. A crime scene photo comes in to show where witnesses first placed the gunman. Defense says it is off, but the judge says jurors can handle the differences. A videotape trying to copy the night lighting gets bounced. The text says cameras see worse than the human eye in low light, so the tape would mislead. First penalty jury hung. At the retrial, the defense plans priests like Father Boyle and Father Horan to talk change and life inside. The DA refuses to reveal rebuttal witnesses. The court backs the DA. Defense pulls the priest to avoid a blindside. On appeal, the high court says that is a no-go. Discovery rules require reciprocal notice of rebuttal once the defense shows its hand. That denial could have changed the penalty play. Result: convictions and special circumstance affirmed, but the death sentence reversed because the state hid the rebuttal lineup and forced the defense to gamble with no info. The street said, "Don't be a rat." The law said, "Play fair," and the court drew that line. On August 20th, 2000, someone smashed Alonzo's windows. He rushed outside and saw 2 Big Hazard members, Malo and Dreamer, laughing and walking off toward Ramona Gardens, Hazard's stronghold. When Alonzo demanded answers, Dreamer socked him in the face. The 2 sides brawled in broad daylight while other Hazard members watched. As they ran off, Dreamer said, "We're going to fuck you up." Neighbors heard it. Everyone knew what that meant. A hit was coming. Police showed up. But when they asked Alonzo what happened, he backed off. He didn't snitch. He was scared Hazard would mark him. That night, masked men sprayed his home with bullets. Neighbors handed cops a bag full of 22 and 45 shells. The message was clear: move out or die. Alonzo moved his family to safety, but he himself stayed behind. And that's when Prudencio Looney Dominguez started showing up. For the next few days, a burgundy Chevy Astro van kept creeping past the house. The driver? Looney, tatted up Big Hazard member. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared. Over and over, he looked pissed, watching, studying. Everybody knew a drive-by wasn't a random thing, it was planned. August 31st, 2000. Alonzo was fixing a car in his driveway with friends Roberto Bedoya and Miguel Pantoja. Looney drove by twice. Minutes later, two gunmen with bandanas charged straight at them. Alonzo yelled, "They're coming to kill me." Shots exploded. Alonzo was hit 3 times. Bedoya died instantly. Pantoja ran and was grazed. Then one shooter yelled, "Let's go." It's over. Just like that, they vanished. Cops found shell casings, blood, graffiti, everything pointing to Big Hazard. A neighbor, Alicia Vargas, saw a dark van arrive just before the shots. But when detectives called her, someone in the room whispered, "Say you didn't see nothing." She backed out. Fear was winning. But the cops weren't done. 6 weeks later, cops hit Looney's house, 1 block from the shooting. Inside, they found a large H sprayed by the door, a K-47, ammo boxes, bulletproof vest, his burgundy van papers, gang photos, a card addressed to Looney. The card even confirmed a rosary was being held for Malo that exact night, 7 p.m., same day as the shooting. They arrested Looney. He swore he left the gang, but his house said otherwise. His trial lasted 3 attempts. The first 2 juries couldn't agree. The third one did. Looney was found guilty of murder and 2 counts of attempted premeditated murder. He was sentenced to 26 years to life plus 2 life terms. His appeal? Denied. Court said straight up, his guns, his home, his behavior, all proved he never left Big Hazard. Ramona Gardens never saw peace for long. The projects witnessed some of LA's most violent events: police shootings, riots, and race-related attacks. Back in the early 1990s, the war that had started in prisons spilled into the streets. The county's gang death toll was hitting new highs every year. In 1992, it hit 800 deaths, the most in Los Angeles history. That number wasn't just statistics. It was bodies on sidewalks, alleys filled with shell casings, and mothers burying their sons. For 5 years straight, gang homicides kept climbing, from 452 to 559 to 690 to 771 and finally 800. A probation officer said, "If we don't fix this like we fixed the space program, our cities are going to burn." And he was right. The city was burning, not just from fires, but from rage. Guns, drugs, and anger ruled the streets. Latino gangs were the ones hitting hardest. The old rules that once kept shootings away from schools or grandma's houses were gone. Now it was wild. Anyone, anywhere. In neighborhoods like Boyle Heights and Hollenbeck, the killing never stopped. By 1992, gang murders in the Hollenbeck division jumped from 26 to 51 in just 1 year. Black gangs had signed truces, but Latino gangs were going to war. Even graffiti taggers started carrying guns just to survive. Party crews, the kids who threw raves, were arming up too. Everyone wanted to live another night. Experts warned that gang life wasn't just about crime anymore. It was becoming its own subculture. The music, the clothes, the slang, it all fed the cycle. One worker said it's all based on anger and hatred of self and of others. And the numbers told the story. Gang killings made up almost 40% of all murders in Los Angeles. The city had turned into a battlefield where the old codes meant nothing. When black families tried moving back into Ramona Gardens in the 2000s, the old hate still lived there. George Sarabia, a former Hazard member turned intervention worker, remembered how bad it got. People were getting guns pulled on them. They were being told to get out of here. He said he'd grown up idolizing his older brothers in the gang, but when he saw black families being threatened just for living there, something changed. Even he caught himself thinking, what if they take over? The fear ran deep. He started working with Legacy LA, trying to break that mindset. It wasn't easy. The same projects that raised him were now a cage filled with old grudges. The worst came back in 1991, when 7 black families lived in Ramona Gardens. One night, their apartments were firebombed. It wasn't random. It was meant to send a message. The cops blamed drugs and teenagers on PCP. But one elderly woman, known as Mama Myers, spoke up. She told the cameras the truth. It was racial. When Maravilla tried to silence her, she hit him with her cane and shouted, "Why wouldn't you let me tell the truth?" That moment stayed with him forever. He realized the hate was eating his own community alive. Back then, more than 1,000 people were killed every year in Los Angeles, most of them gang-related. The East Side, patrolled by the LAPD's Hollenbeck Division, had over 30 gangs in just 15 square miles. Police couldn't keep up. When they entered Ramona Gardens, they were often shot at. Some officers never came back out. At the same time, residents accused the LAPD of going too far, raiding homes, arresting kids, beating down anyone who looked like a gangster. It was a cycle of hate. The gangs hated the cops feared the gangs, and the people were stuck in the middle. Years later, things started to shift. People like C.J. Johnson, a young black father, moved into Ramona Gardens with his girlfriend. At first, it was tense. One of the older cats pulled me aside and said, "We can't go to Nickerson Gardens and play ball, so why you here?" Johnson remembered. It wasn't just a threat, it was a test. But over time, he earned respect. He joined local basketball tournaments, helped bring other black players in, and slowly the walls began to crack. Maravilla saw hope in that. CJ opened a door. He said, "We gotta break that barrier." It wasn't perfect. Guns were still pulled during games, but people kept showing up. By 2013, Black and Latino kids were playing together in the same gym, something unthinkable 20 years earlier. Maravilla called it history in the making. Even with progress, fear never disappeared. Residents like Jeff Littrell, a black father raising his son Malik in the projects, kept reminders of the danger. When someone threw a rock through his window, he kept it as a warning. "I still have the rock," he said, "just to remind me where I'm at." But over time, he and Malik became part of the neighborhood. Malik was smart, friendly, and good at sports. "He's got more love than me around here," Jeff said proudly. "I can go wherever now because of him. They know I'm Malik's daddy." That kind of acceptance didn't happen overnight. It took years, patience, and the courage of people who refused to give up. But deep down, everyone knew the peace was fragile. The ghosts of the past still lingered on the walls of Ramona Gardens. On July 15th, 2008, three homies, Hector Duarte, Armando Jordan, and Johnny Cervantes, hit a house at 10 a.m., pushed in with straps and demanded feria. Inside, Jubencio Hernandez, his son, and two workers got zip-tied, face down with pillows over their heads while wallets, keys, and cash got snatched. Maria Velasquez handed over her money to Jordan. Sirens hit, the crew peeled, and all three were scooped later. Cops found two guns that matched the victim's story, but no prints or DNA. Still, the victim's play-by-play held tight. After the arrests, Jordan and Cervantes claimed Maria Maravilla. Duarte said he was ex-MV. A gang expert said Maria is a subset tied to Mariana Maravilla, showed the plazas, hand signs, and a MySpace flick of Jordan throwing it up. All three had MV Inc. The expert laid out MV's primary activities: murder, dope sales, gun cases, assaults, shootings, arson, robberies, and listed member convictions for a concealed burner in 2007 and dope in 2008. The jury heard it and connected the dots. The court said the gang add-on fit because the lick was for the benefit of or in association with a criminal street gang and done to promote, further, or assist gang crime. Three active MV heads rolled together, which boosts muscle, fear, and rep, and the proceeds keep heat on the block. The crew even hid outside their 5-block hood, a move that keeps IDs low while pumping the gang's name. That was enough under the law. Since 120 22.53 doesn't apply to burglary, the judge switched to 1202 2.5 for using a gun, gave the highest term, and then put that burglary time on hold. In other words, he paused that sentence so it only matters if the main one gets undone. Cervantes tried to toss 2-strike priors as too old, but his sheet was long and loud. Juvie hits, robberies, guns, prison terms, parole violations. The court said he's exactly who 3 strikes is built for and left his 57 to life standing while Duarte and Jordan took 19 to life each. On February 2, 2010, a grand jury hit Elmer Maravilla, aka Elmo, with Fed drug and gun counts. He took a deal, pled to conspiracy to distribute 50 grams or more of meth, and the feds dropped the 924-say gun count. He signed the paper and rolled into sentencing, where the court gave him 145 months in the pen an 8-year supervised release. His lawyer filed an Anders brief saying he saw no non-frivolous issues, but Elmo still pushed back on how the judge stacked his numbers. At sentencing, witnesses laid it out. They said Elmo ran point, a supervisor over moves that totaled 36.34 grams of actual meth. The court said in a conspiracy, you eat not just your dope, but what your crew pushes if it is reasonably foreseeable. A witness also saw a black pistol in his waistband during a deal. Even though the gun count was dismissed, the judge could still use that as relevant conduct and bump his offense level. That is how the guidelines work. Elmo tried to knock down his criminal history points because 2 priors were 16 and 17 years old, but his release dates put them inside the 15-year window the guidelines use, so they counted. He also claimed he was not banging anymore. The record said different. Testimony tied him to MS-13 at the time, which the judge was allowed to weigh. On appeal, Elmo attacked everything: leader, organizer, crew weight, firearm bump, history points, and his alleged set ties. The 10th Circuit ran the standard check and found no clear error. Witnesses backed the supervisory role. The 36.34 grams were within the agreement's scope. The gun enhancement was legit even with the 924C dismissed. The old conviction still counted under the rules, and the gang evidence held. Bottom line, the panel affirmed his time and let counsel withdraw. Night falls in East LA. A young family pulls off the 60, hunting a cheap room. They stop near Rowan and Hamill. 4 dudes roll up on the driver's side. One steps in close and says, "What you got there?" That face is locked in the driver's head. He dips into a driveway, tries to bail out, but the crew closes again. 2 of them, later ID'd as Michael Nataras and Alfaro, got burners in hand. The family peels off. Muzzle flashes pop in the rear view. 3 shots. Their 2-year-old is in the back seat. The driver hits 911, ducks into a lot, watches the block. He sees the shooter stop, talk, scoop something up, then head to a nearby house. Cops roll in. The PA system wakes the block. Nataras and Alfaro come out from the garage. The driver and his girl both point them out on scene and later in photo lineups. They say they're sure. Tests find gunshot residue on both suspects' hands. Not proof they fired for sure, but it means firing, handling, or being close to the heat. A warrant cracks the spot around 3 a.m. The house is Gage Maravilla turf. Nataras stays inside with his mom. Alfaro lives in the converted garage with Nataras' sister and their kid. Deputies find a hole in the garage ceiling. Inside his sock, a semi-auto pistol. One deputy says Nataras walked fine to and from the car that night. A gang detective breaks it down. Gage Maravilla has around 89 heads, with cliques like Maravilla Rifa and Gage Boys under the same Gage umbrella. The house is a known hangout. Rivals include Dog Pound KAM and Lot 13. Alfaro? Dog Pound Inc. and Admissions, but he posts up in Gage territory because of family ties. In this life, blood can trump beef, and rival homies sometimes do work together. To prove the gang pattern, the state drops 2 predicates tied to Gage Maravilla. First, a 2013 attempted murder conviction for Elias Nataras, Michael's brother, who admitted Gage and fired at a party on their turf. Second, a 2013 felon with a gun conviction for Joaquin Vogo Munoz, a self-admitted Gage member caught strapped while walking in rival hood. The detective also says he's talked to Michael 20 to 30 times. Michael admitted Gage and his ink says it too. GB, Boys, Gage MV, MLV. Family pushes back. They say Michael got hit days earlier, hurt bad, face down, needing help to walk, knocked out by 7 p.m. No shots heard. But the detective says he saw him walk fine, and the night before he told cops he expected retaliation after being shot by KAM. The jury convicts on shooting at an occupied car and assault with a firearm. They find the gang enhancement true. Michael admits he was out on bail. He gets life with a chance at parole on the car shooting, plus 2 years on the bail add-on, with the assault stayed. On appeal, Michael says the gang proof is weak under Prunty because Gage has subsets, and the jury got the wrong instruction, and the expert used banned hearsay under Sanchez. The court isn't buying it. They say the state proved the big set, Gage Maravilla, not random subsets. The instruction matched the law, and the expert leaned on personal knowledge and certified court records for the predicates, not testimonial hearsay. Bottom line from the panel, the case stands as charged, and the gang tag sticks because the hit went down on Gage turf, boosted fear, and tied back to Gage through ink admissions, and prior gauge cases. The street story lined up with the court record, and the enhancement rolls forward. By 2014, law enforcement finally decided enough was enough. A massive federal RICO operation targeted Big Hazard, calling them one of the most dangerous street gangs in East LA. Over 800 agents swarmed Boyle Heights, hitting homes across Ramona Gardens before sunrise. In total, 38 members were indicted, 25 were arrested that morning, 7 were already locked up, 5 were on the run, and 1 had just been killed. The feds described Big Hazard as a multi-generational criminal enterprise. The charges included murder, extortion, robbery, drug trafficking, and weapons sales, all tied together under the RICO Act. Acting U.S. Attorney Stephanie Yonakura said all of the gang's operations were done under intimidation, making threats, committing violence against rivals, residents, and even Hazard members who cooperated. She added that the gang made it clear that black residents were not welcome in the neighborhood. Those words confirmed what everyone already knew. Hazard's control was built on fear. According to the indictment, Big Hazard's main hustle was drug trafficking. They sold everything: meth, PCP, cocaine, crack, heroin, and taxed anyone hustling in their turf. If you sold in Hazard's zone, you paid rent. Some of that money went straight to Mexican Mafia leaders in prison. The lead defendant was Manuel Larry Jackson, known as Cricket, a Mexican Mafia shot caller who oversaw Hazard's street ops. He ran the business like a CEO, ordering hits, handling drug deals, and keeping his soldiers in line. Because of Cricket's power, Hazard members could move drugs even outside their neighborhood without fear of retaliation, a privilege few gangs had. As one IRS agent joked, calling yourself a taxing authority gets the attention of the Internal Revenue Service. The feds traced Hazard's money trail through fake complaints, hidden drug houses, and extortion schemes. Every move, every dollar led back to Cricket and the Mafia. The 110-page indictment painted a picture of total control. Hazard had CCTV cameras watching cops, fake calls sent to distract patrols, and intimidation against anyone who talked. Their graffiti said it loud, no blacks. Their message was simple: fear keeps people quiet. Federal agents worked alongside the LAPD, ATF, IRS, FBI, and the Sheriff's Department. The takedown hit hard. With RICO charges, each member faced up to life in prison. It was one of the biggest crackdowns in East LA history. But even after the arrests, one thing was clear: the name Big Hazard still carried weight. For decades, they'd turned a public housing project into their kingdom, their battlefield, and their legacy. May 3rd, 2014. The hood is tense. Store cams catch Christian Almanza in a light shirt walking first. Seconds later, Anthony Rivas rolls up in a dark shirt and light shorts. Inside Soto Liquor, Almanza speaks with Ricardo Hernandez. They step out, cut left, and the frame loses them. Then shots crack the night. Right before it pops off, the tape shows Rivas near a dumpster, pulling something from his pocket, hands moving like he is racking a semi. No trigger pull on camera, and that gap becomes everything. Witnesses only see dark clothes and a black t-shirt on the shooter. 4.380 casings hit the ground. Emerico Beltran, who grew up with Rivas, catches a round in the leg. He lives, but now a friend becomes part of the crime scene. And that twist adds heat to the gang story still unfolding. Cops say both Rivas and Almanza claim Big Hazard. The gang runs Ramona Gardens and the store corner. Soldiers put in work, OGs carry weight, shot callers call plays. A soldier taking out his own is rare unless a boss orders it. Fear is currency. If the hood thinks you will even smoke your own, nobody talks. After 1 a.m., a message hits Almanza's phone. "Hey, I need that toy." Other texts read, "I fudge up and what can I do?" And "I just hope they don't have me on camera. Plus, still here, me and Rivas, drinking, LOL." They don't clear Rivas, they tighten the circle, and the jury hears how even an accidental hit on Beltran can still ride with gang intent. Rivas attacks the case on 2 fronts: hidden texts under Brady and hearsay under Sanchez. The court says no reversal. The texts don't help him, and the gang experts stayed in bounds with proper hypotheticals and priors. Bifurcation denied. Enhancements stick, except one crack remains. New law lets the judge maybe drop the gun add-ons. The case goes back for that call, and the block waits to see if those years get shaved or not. Late 2014, inside Ramona Gardens, a Latina mom with 3 kids, by a black man runs into Jose Saucedo. First time, he barks racial slurs and threats. Then it heats up. He comes back shirtless, Big Hazard ink showing, her 3-year-old right there. He tells her to bounce from the project, says, "Our hood don't get down like this." Warns her she doesn't want cocktails flying in the house, calls it her second warning. Around that time, a black families unit in the same project got firebombed. The message felt loud. Prosecutors file a criminal threat case, Section 422A, and stack gang and hate crime enhancements. Saucedo takes the deal, no contest, admits the gang tie and the hate tag. Judge lays down 11 years, but suspends it, puts him on 5 years formal probation. Terms are tight, no rolling with Big Hazard at all. Stay 100 yards from any Big Hazard homie or spot where they post up, and keep clear of the turf that feeds the set. 4 months later, cops spot him in the same housing project tied to the threat, kicking it with another Big Hazard member. Another officer hits his place and finds Hazard riding in gang gear. That's 2 strikes on the terms right there. Contact with a member and being inside a known congregation spot. Court runs the violation hearing and calls it probation revoked, suspended time turned on, 11 years to state prison with 300 days credit. He appeals, but his lawyer raises no issues under Wendy. The appellate panel says the record is clean. Being in the exact project where Big Hazard gathers proves he broke the 100-yard stay away, and he knew it. The judgment stands, and the warning he gave in the hood comes back on him. Hard. Back in early May 2014, the crew gathered up. Prosecutors say a ringleader, Carlos Hernandez, calls the shot. Word is the order came down from Mexican Mafia figures, the prison power that moves many Southland sets. The plan sounds cold and clean. Hit apartments where black families live with Molotov cocktails, scare them out for good. Jobs get passed out like gear. Who breaks glass, who lights, who throws. Disguises and gloves get handed over. The mission is set and the night is coming. May 11th, Mother's Day. The squad pulls up after midnight. They stash cell phones so cops can't ping their moves. They pick a route that ducks the cameras, slide through the courtyards and keep it low. Windows of 4 scouted units get cracked open with hammers. Lit bottles fly. 3 of those homes have black families inside, women and babies sleeping when the glass pops. One mother hears the shatter and rolls off the couch with her infant as a firebomb whistles past. It was a miracle that no one was injured, the U.S. attorney says, and the whole block knew it could have been a mass casualty scene. The point is not subtle. Terrorize, push out, make the project a no-go zone for black residents. Prosecutors say the goal was to drive African Americans away from Ramona Gardens. The statement is blunt. These defendants have admitted their goal was to drive African Americans out of this housing facility. That fear did not die with the flames either. Months later, a Big Hazard member told a black family to leave or they would get firebombed too. The threat kept moving, and so did the anxiety. 8 Big Hazard members are named in that night's run. 3 had already pleaded guilty under seal. In April 2018, prosecutors announced 3 more will plead: Jose Saucedo, 24, Edwin Felix, 26, and Jonathan Portillo, 23. The deal spares them from taking the stand against 2 others still fighting their cases. Each faces more than 30 years in federal time. The feds promised to ask for some leniency for those who confessed, but the time still sounds heavy. Carlos Hernandez, also known as Rider or Creeper, gets tagged as the one who planned and led the mission. He divided roles, gave out lighters and hammers, and even masked up the crew. He armed himself with a semi-auto, just in case the night turned sideways. Federal agents and local partners built a task force, and after 2 years of work, the charges got unsealed. The case shows how a housing project beef can pull in prison politics, street muscle, and federal law all at once. This was not a one-off. Prosecutors point to other cases where Latino sets use violence to push black residents out. Florence Firestone saw a campaign tied to 20 homicides over 3 years. Harbor Gateway carried the pain of Cheryl Green's 2006 killing. Highland Park had a string of assaults and murders in the 1990s. Ramona Gardens fit that pattern. The 2014 attack brought back the old echo in a place that thought it was getting past the 90s. While the firebomb case moved, another battle lit up the courts. In 2016, the ACLU of Southern California and partners sued over Los Angeles gang injunctions. They said the city slapped probation-like rules on people without a hearing, no chance to fight the gang member label. The complaint called out vogue criteria, clothes, friends, or just being in a certain area, and said thousands, mostly men of color, got hit with bans on normal life like hanging with family, drinking in public, or even carrying basic items. The ask was simple: stop enforcement until due process is real. The suit ran as a class action for nearly 10,000 residents. Plaintiffs included Youth Justice Coalition and 2 men placed on injunctions without any hearing, one from Echo Park, one formerly from Ramona Gardens. The legal shot said the city used injunctions because they could control people without filing criminal cases. The Ninth Circuit had already blasted a similar Orange County system, and the message here was the same: the government cannot cage daily life by label alone. In September 2017, a federal judge issued a preliminary ruling for lead plaintiff, Peter Arellano. The court said Los Angeles likely violated the Constitution by enforcing an injunction against him without a real process. Advocates put it this way: the city had built a tool on a constitutional violation, and they needed to stop using it. For people living in gang-policed zones, that ruling cracked open a door many thought was welded shut. The feds say each man faces decades. This simply will not be tolerated, the top prosecutor adds. On the street, that translates to, the feds are watching and the playbook has changed. March 23, 2021, the ringleader stands in federal court. Carlos Hernandez gets 192 months, 16 years in federal prison. Judge Christina A. Snyder says her sentence is meant to send a message to the community that hate crimes will not be tolerated. And this was not a time for any court to tolerate hate crimes. He had pleaded to 5 heavy counts: civil rights conspiracy, violent crime in aid of racketeering, criminal interference with fair housing rights, use of fire in a federal felony, and carrying a gun in a crime of violence. Other defendants had already taken years: 156 months, 144 months, 92 months, 63 months, 42 months. Everyone admitted they did it because of race and color, and that the goal was to force people out of their federally funded homes. The FBI, LAPD, LAFD, and ATF all linked up on the case. They ID'd the crew, tracked the plan, and kept pushing until the charges stuck. There is absolutely no place for race-based violence in a civilized society. The FBI's Los Angeles lead says the Justice Department pledged to keep these prosecutions a priority. For families in Ramona Gardens, those words aim to put weight behind the promise that their doors should be safe at night. The indictment said the heat didn't cool down right away. Threats still floated. Some residents asked for emergency transfers. Others decided to stay. By late 2016, about 4% of the nearly 1,800 residents in Ramona Gardens were Black. It was a small number, but in a place shaped by fire, it showed people were still willing to plant roots. The stakes were not just turf or pride. They were homes, babies, grandparents, and the simple right to sleep without looking over your shoulder. The smoke has thinned in East LA, and the streets breathe different now. The sirens are quieter, the murals are louder, and the vibe is pride, not panic. Car shows line up chrome under the sun. Lowriders glide slow, and the paint tells old war stories without firing a shot. Chicano art holds the corners where beef once did. The Barrio still remembers, but it also heals. Maravilla and White Fence have not vanished, but the sets feel smaller, less active, more ghost than roar. The talk is simple, and it matters. Show respect. Get respect. That code keeps the peace better than any curfew ever did. The OGs who survived the worst years tell the youngsters to move smarter, stack legit, and keep the hood clean. You can feel it at block parties and Sunday meetups, families taking the sidewalk back, vendors posting up, kids running where yellow tape used to hang. Still, you can't erase history. The handball courts, the old avenues, the names on walls, they all whisper what this place paid. East LA is not trying to forget, it is trying to grow. The city that once bled now dances, and the same streets that hosted green lights now host shine and music. That's the flip, from fear to culture, from war to work, from sets to community. So where does the story go from here? Do the old rivalries fade, or do they just change faces? Can art and respect keep the peace when money and pride collide? Who protects the code when outsiders test the block? And if the hood is reborn, what will you do to keep it alive? Let us know what you think in the comments box below. And if you liked how we presented you this video, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe for more.